This is Manny. Today we're installing these auxiliary gauges in my 1970 Chevy Chevelle. So here are the three auxiliary gauges that we're installing today. We have temperature, voltage, and oil pressure. Temperature line is a direct line that does not separate, that's all one piece, and it goes directly to the motor. The voltage gauge is two lines, one being positive, one being negative, negative going to ground, and the positive going to a source coming from the battery. And the oil pressure goes directly to the motor, but it is several pieces and several connectors that you can piece together. So the bracket we're going to be installing for the auxiliary gauges is a very basic universal bracket, one that you'll find anywhere. It's got 3 holes, 2 inches in diameter each hole. It's black. I mean, they have chrome, but I chose black. And it's just a very basic installation with 3 holes that'll mount onto the bottom of the dash. So in this video, I'm not actually going to show how to mount it or how to drill the holes. I'm going to assume that you either know how to do it or that you can find a video that'll show you how to do it. And either way, each bracket is different. So this particular bracket might be the same, might not be the same one that you're working with. So I'm gonna already do it as if I already drilled the holes. So I actually did that already. I have the screws that I'm gonna be using. I'm using the right set of screws, and I'm gonna make sure that it's positioned to in a way that I like it. It's centered and it's close enough to where I can actually see it at all times. So where you connect the water temperature sensor, that's totally up to you. A lot of people do it a different way. Supposedly the gauge manufacturers, they recommend putting it into the intake by the thermostat housing. Supposedly it's a better read for there. And I know I've talked to a lot of people and they say between 1 and 3 on the head right here. And then some people on the opposite side say 6 and 8 on the actual head right here. One of the locations that a lot of people use is right here by the thermostat housing on the intake manifold. It's a great spot. You're gonna get an accurate read. It's gonna be very responsive. In my particular case and in my manifold, I'm actually not gonna be using it just for the pure fact that I have the bracket covering this access point right here. And instead of trying to modify either like a 90-degree connection or modifying the bracket, I'm just gonna leave it like that. And I'm actually gonna choose a different place to locate it. A lot of people say that they'll get a more accurate read, that'll be more responsive here. And I can see where they're coming from and it'll work. This is actually a very, very good spot to put it in if you decide to do it here, just because the coolant will travel. This is like the final spot or the point of highest heat before the coolant finally goes to the radiator to cool down. So a lot of people say that you get the most accurate read here. So that's one of the pros. One of the cons is if you're low on coolant, you're gonna get some misreads because obviously you'll be getting vapors, or you'll not be getting any type of coolant running through there. So you might get a misread, or you might be having some issues there. So I just fitted through the water temperature line, and you're gonna have to go through the vehicle inside, just because this goes affixed to the gauge, so there's no way to separate it. So you're gonna have to put this through the grommet and through the hole, make sure it's big enough to fit through, and then plug it in wherever you're gonna plug it in. All right, so don't make the mistake that I made and install the water temperature before you install the bracket. So the water temperature is all one line, one solid piece that really shouldn't be disconnected, and it should just run in continuously. And so I made the mistake of installing this, and then there's no way to get this into the bracket. So I gotta take it off and then put the bracket on, and then put this on after the bracket is installed. So I temporarily secured the water line into the heads, and I'm not gonna permanently seal it yet just because I don't have the headers installed. I want to make sure that the line clears the headers, make sure it's not touching or getting anywhere near close the headers. I don't want to cause any issues or any misreads because it's barely nicking or touching the headers. And so right now I'm just gonna keep it in there for now, and then when I put in the headers, I'm gonna make sure that I fasten it 100% and it's not touching the headers. So you're gonna run 2 lines to the voltmeter to get this connected. One for positive, one for negative. The positive I'm running to an auxiliary fuse panel that I connected in a separate video. You can check that out. And the negative really can go to any grounding point. You can choose to do it with the illumination wires that we're going to install right now, or you can go to a separate grounding point. It really doesn't matter. Just make sure you get a good grounding point and make sure it's constantly connected and it doesn't get switched off. And then the positive, obviously, just you want to get a source that's straight to the battery so you can get an accurate reading. So the way I connected the voltage gauge was I ran this white wire to the auxiliary fuse panel that I installed, and I get the reading directly from the battery, and it already has a fuse panel installed, and it's just a lot cleaner and safer because it's running through a relay. Now I may switch up the connection. I might put this one on top, but I'm just testing it for right now. But the whole goal is that it looks clean, it looks factory, and it's safe and dependable. And the negative wire that goes to the voltage meter, I was able to find a good grounding spot on the dash frame. One that I was already using, one that I knew was clean, one that I knew was getting a good solid connection, and I was able to connect it there. Here are the wires that connect to the light bulbs for the gauges. And the 3 positive wires, I was able to join up together, connect them to illumination that was in the radio. I was able to splice in to that illumination wire. And the negative cables, I was able to connect them and find a good grounding point behind the dash that I was already using. So I'm going to be connecting the line directly to the oil pressure port on the back of the block. It's located right here. And I'm not going to be running dummy lights for the oil, or really for anything on that matter. And so I'm just going to be connecting it directly. If you are planning on using dummy lights, you will have to use a fitting, or you can find a different spot to connect the oil pressure line. But that's just what I'm using for my application, and it's going to work good for mine. The other location you can decide to use is right here by the oil filter on the driver's side of the block. Again, you'll get as good of a reading as you do up top. I chose up top just because it's easier to access. I'm not running the oil dummy light. And so here, you'll get an accurate reading as well. To me, it just seems like if the motor's inside the car, it's harder to access to. And so for that reason, I'm decided just to go straight to the oil pressure port. This is what the fitting looks like when it's all pieced together. I haven't tightened yet because I'm actually not even going to use this line. I have a copper line that I ordered and it should be coming in soon. And if you have the option to use copper instead of plastic, I definitely recommend you doing that. Now this one came with a kit, so it can't be that bad, but you do run the risk of it either melting or getting a kink in it and start leaking. And so I do recommend going copper over plastic. All right, so I got the motor in last week. I figured I'd finish off the gauges. And here's the oil pressure line that I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna be using copper instead of the plastic one that came with the kit. This one's a lot better. I'm gonna get better results, and it's just much more better peace of mind than having the plastic. And so this is going to the back of the block where the oil pressure port is, and into that grommet right there to connect it to the gauge. I'm going to be testing the oil and temperature gauge later once I'm finished with the motor. I'm still working on some stuff and I'm getting it ready to start it soon. So for the time being, I know that I connected everything right, so I don't foresee any problems. And these gauges are, pretty simple. They're mechanical, and as long as you connect everything right, you shouldn't have any issues. There you have it. I have all the gauges connected. When I first started, I had the engine out, and so I did want to show in the video the different locations for the connections, and so dropped it in, and I'm gonna be starting it pretty soon. So I'm still working on some stuff, but I wanted to upload it and just show my progress there. I didn't cover all the details. There's some other videos that cover it pretty extensively. You can check out Chris Craft's video on auxiliary gauges and David Leese's video. Those two helped me out a lot. So I just wanted to cover it from a different angle, but I didn't want to cover all the details that were already well covered. If you like the video, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.